Every library is very heavily invested and focused on their community. And there's a million different reasons that they might say yes or no to a book. One of the big components that people don't consider all the time is space. Some have to be way more selective about what materials they bring in because they have a space issue.
Welcome back to the Business of Christian Fiction podcast. I am excited for this episode and to introduce you to my guest today. It's a special guest of mine. It's my lovely sister, Ceilidh Jimenez. She is a librarian. And so for many of us, I know growing up, we probably spent the majority of our lives in a library, those of us who are writers. And we want to know, how can we get our book into a library? Like that, it's a dream of ours to be able to see our book in a library. And so I thought, who better to ask than my sister to get kind of the inside scoop on how do authors get their books into libraries and what can we do, especially those of us who are indie authors or working with small presses. How can we get our books into a library? So thank you, Ceilidh, for joining me this morning. I'm so
You're
glad to have
welcome.
you. It's
Yeah,
so
thanks for
fun.
having me.
So fun. So, Ceilidh, I want to start with you just kind of explaining a little bit about your background as a librarian. How did you land in this role? And what exactly do you do at the library right now?
Yeah, so how I ended up in libraries is kind of a wonky story. So I graduated college in 2019 and I graduated with a bachelor's in English. And we all know what quickly followed 2019 is the 2020 pandemic during the shutdown, and it was impossible to find a job, let alone a job in English. So,
You graduated with a degree in English with an emphasis in writing and communications,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
right. So I have a minor in communication. So
Okay.
it was just no one was, hiring at all. And so during the pandemic, I also got let go. I was a barista at the time, so I got let go from my barista job because they weren't functioning at the time. And so I had a lot of downtime. And so I was doing a lot of self-reflection and a lot of thought about where I want to go with my life and what direction I want to go to. And so I was considering going back to school, and so I was looking into grad school programs and I was looking into possibly going into trades, and I was just evaluating what I wanted to do. And a family friend was like, "You would be a really good librarian. Like, you should look into going to library school." And so I looked into it. I thought about it a lot. I've always loved the library. We grew up going to the library all the time. And I still, like, to this day, love reading and always have and always will. And so I was like, all right, like, I'll look into it. And so it was still pretty much during the pandemic. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply to one grad school. And if I get in, I'll go. So I applied to the University of Wisconsin Madison to their online library and information school. And I got in, and so then I ended up going in 2021, and that was the start of my, grad school program to become a librarian, and then I graduated in 23, and, the entire time that I was in grad school, I actually got a job in a library working part-time as a reference associate. So I was basically the assistant to everyone in my department. I worked in the youth department and I did a lot of desk stuff. So I was on the desk a lot helping patrons, which I loved and is still one of my favorite things to do. But I was just helping everyone else in the department who played a bigger role. I helped them with a lot of the tasks that they need help with, like cutting paper for take and makes and measuring rope and stuff or setting up displays. Stuff like that is what I mainly did while I was super part time. And then the spring before I graduated, an opportunity came up to be the teen librarian. And so they offered me the job the spring that I was graduating. And I couldn't be more thankful for that. So I accepted it a few months before my graduation. And then I graduated and I've been in that position ever since. And I love it.
That's great. I I remember that time in 2019 when you were like wrestling with what your next steps were going to be. You love poetry, you're very good at writing it, and you're considering maybe doing a MFA and then just all these different like writing components, and you ultimately settled on library science. And I think it's so cool that you took the time to evaluate that and to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what would I really enjoy doing? What fits my personality? What can I do that will actually garner a paycheck? Because as we know, being a writer isn't always the most lucrative job on the planet. And so it's just to be able to set down kind of some of your initial goals and aspirations and to say, I need to make a pivot. What do I need to pivot to? And so I think that's just really encouraging to, people who are just trying to navigate what to do and when to do it and how to do it and what to pursue and what goals to try to go after and what to set down and whatnot. And so I think it's really cool that you are really willing to listen and reevaluate and take steps that were a little scary and kind of not completely verging off into a totally different course, but kind of in a way like you were headed one direction and you just kind of pivoted.
Mm.
And so it's been fun to watch you blossom in this role that you have and blossom into this industry that you're in now. And so it's been fun. It's been fun as your big sister to watch you kind of grow into all
Well,
that.
when it came to the decision to, like, be in libraries, like, one of the biggest determining factors for me was I've always had a passion for, like, the literary world. I love literature. I love writing. I love all this stuff. Um, but I also always have had a passion for working with people and helping people.
Yeah.
And that's, the number one thing I do all day long in a library. And so to find a niche that I could do both those things at the same time, it just meant the world to me.
Very exciting. So you're the teen librarian. What's your official role?
So, teen librarian is my title. I work in the library services department. So, that is one of the public facing departments. So, basically, my role, a majority of my day is working on the floor, is what we call it, which is like the part of the library that's open to the public. So, I'm on the floor, mostly behind the desk. So, I'm helping patrons with anything they need assistance with. So, whether that's reference help or learning how to use any of our resources or signing up for programs or just wanting to learn more about pretty much anything. You can really ask your librarian anything and we'll try to help you the best we can. Um, so that's a big chunk of my day. And because I'm the teen librarian, I do that out in the regular floor, but I do that a lot in the teen room as well. So I'm normally in there. We're about a block away from the high school. And so our after school rush in the fall and the spring is huge. So I get a lot of teenagers in there. I try to be there for them as much as possible, but also just hanging out with them and building relationships to get to know them. It's what I spend most of my time doing in the afternoon. In addition to working with the public and being on the floor with them, I also help host programs. We have a programming department, so they handle a lot of that, but I'd still like to do that. I still like to put together take and makes for kids to do or like anime trivia programs, anything that I think they would like. Sometimes they don't want it, and that's fine too, but anything that I think they would want to come to. And then another big part of my job is I'm, a collection selector. So I select books for teen fiction and also for teen nonfiction, and then I also select the anime DVDs as well. So that is also, one of the major components of my job. So besides working with the public and being on the floor and some of the inner workings of the library, I also spend a majority of my time selecting materials for everyone to read.
Okay. That is where I wanna focus in. It sounds like you have a pretty fun job. You get to interact with people and help them find the right resources that they need, especially books. My kids are always asking their librarian, like, "Where's this? Where is that?" Um, so as a librarian who is selecting the books, can you walk us through that process a little bit? This,
Yeah.
book selection, the curation, side of your job. How exactly does that process unfold?
Mhm. So there's a lot that goes into curating a library collection, and it's going to look completely different. Even if I was managing the teen fiction collection at another library, it could actually be completely different than me managing at the library I'm currently at. Because one of the big components that people don't consider all the time is space. You have to look at your collection and say, okay, how much space do I have? Some people have to be way more selective about what materials they bring in because they have a space issue and they don't have room for materials. When we remove books from the collection, we call it weeding. Some people have to weed way more often than other librarians because they just don't have the space capacity or they have a really high volume library. So the materials get worn out really quickly. So all those different components go into managing your collection. You have to take all those things into consideration. You also have to greatly take into consideration your population. which is one of the reasons why it's so important for me to be on the floor, talking to the teenagers, helping them find what they want. Because sometimes I'll be helping a kid and I'm like, oh, we don't have this very specific thing you're interested in. Like, I need to find more books on this. Or I'll be like, hey, we have a ginormous hold list for these books. I need to buy more of them, or I need to
Mm.
figure out something like it that we can put on the shelf to help fulfill this need. That's a major thing that I have to keep into mind when I select too is like, who am I buying books for? Who are these kids? What do they look like? What do they like? So those are things that I keep in the back of my mind when I'm looking for books. And then the process of actually finding what to buy. So sometimes space is really limited in my library. So I have to be really selective about what I buy or don't buy, what I get rid of, what I don't get rid of. And my kids love popular reads. Of course, we have all the classics because they need them for school, but mostly what they're reaching for to read is the popular stuff.
Mhm.
So I keep that in mind when I'm always trying to get them the New York Times bestsellers, and I'm always trying to get them whatever's trending on TikTok. I'm always trying to get them really popular authors who have like their 50th book coming out. I always try to make sure that I'm getting them those popular titles because that's what they really want and that's what circulates a lot. So part of that process is I have a lot of different resources that I rely on when I'm researching what to buy. A lot of it is journals that are specifically geared towards telling you what the new bestsellers are, or what the articles of what's popular. So things like Library Journal and School Library Journal, I rely on a lot. Book Riot, Publishers Weekly, the New York Times bestseller list. Also, a lot of publishing company themselves will come out with articles like these are all our favorite, publications that we're coming out with for the fall, and so I'll look
Mhm.
through them and I'll pick through them there as
Do they send those to you directly, or does that go through are they putting those articles into a journal, or is that like they're mailing those out to the libraries across?
for some of them, we're on a mailing list, so we do actually still get physical materials. I don't really like to read the physical ones. It's easier for me just to thumb through them through on the website, but they tend to publish them both. They send us actual physical articles like, what are they? Like magazines.
Newsletters
Like
or
newsletters, yeah.
catalogs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they send just, like, newsletters and catalogs, but they're pretty much publishing them all online now. Some of them are behind a paywall, like we have their work. That's how I'm reading a lot of those and seeing those. Publishing houses will also send us pre-publications, so which is my favorite way to select books because then you get to see them and you get to hold them and you get to, read some of them. I also selfishly just like to read a lot of things that come out before they're published. It's one of the funnest parts of the job. There's a lot of research involved. Reviews are also a really big thing. So when I'm evaluating something to buy, who's reviewed it already is a big part of it.
Are you looking for reviewers that are like
Professional reviewers.
professional reviewers, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Goodreads is really good to see what's popular though. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
public opinion.
Yeah.
I look at Amazon's top sellers too because um a lot of people will buy their books from Amazon. So that's also good insight. So I look at all those and I look at those reviews too. Because those are really good ways to see from a community standpoint what's popular. Um, and then reading like professional review sites is a good way to see like what kind of value could this bring to my collection. Some professional reviews I can read and I can be like, okay, so this has a diverse cast. This has, this hits these points. This hits those points. This is going to reach those kids who are looking for something like this. So I like to use both. I always read the Goodreads list when they're like books we're looking forward to in summer. I always read those, and I always read the reviews too. Sometimes also whether or not I buy a book that I'm like questioning. Sometimes the make and break for me personally is who's reviewed it.
Mm.
Because if I don't have a physical, I can't read every single book.
Right.
It's not possible, right? So if I know I'm not gonna have the chance to read it, no one has requested it. That's the other thing. It doesn't happen super often, but sometimes people will come to us and be like, "Please buy this book."
Mhm.
And so I always try the only reason why I wouldn't buy a book that someone asked for is if it's out of publication. A lot of times that's one of the issues is they're looking from a book that was published like 10 years ago. I can't buy it anymore. It's out
Yeah,
of
it's just
print.
not available without a print.
Not
Yeah.
available, yeah. But if it's something that I can get my hands on, I normally do buy it. So
Okay.
so sometimes if I can't get a hold of it, I have no clue to see what's in it, like, it's hard sometimes, but then I see that, like, Library Journal will give it a really good review. I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, like, Library Journal is really well respected, like, they said it was good, I don't mind buying it for the collection." So I, make a huge list of all these books in a huge cart, and then once I hit a certain number, I send them along to our purchaser, and then our purchaser buys them for me, and then once they get in, your material services or your tech services, they do all the really hard work of cataloging. So they do all that stuff. They put it in the catalog, they put all the stickers on it, and then they give them to me, and I just get to look at them and double check them, and so I get to put the genre stickers on them. So
Fun stickers. It's funny you mentioned it, the other day we were trying to take a book out like, we were trying to check a book out, and it had gone through the cataloging process because there was a sticker on it, but
Mhm.
the barcode was not being recognized in the system, so the librarian had to do all that really fast in front of me, and I was like, I had never, the books are just
It's
there. It just
And depending what type of library and what size library you're in, you might do that whole process by yourself.
Yeah.
I work for not a huge library, but like a fairly large, medium-sized library. And so we have different departments to do those things. But if you're in a smaller library branch, or maybe you're just really good at everything, you might do all that yourself. So
Yeah.
it really depends on like where your librarian at. That's going to greatly affect like how involved you are in the life of a library book, so to say.
Yeah. It was funny because 'cause they're like, "Oh, this is a new book," and I was like, I've never, I don't think I've ever realized that I was checking something out that new, and it wasn't even
Uh-huh.
in the system yet. Somebody had just forgotten to obviously do one little step. It's interesting to think about the different places along the process of who might have to touch that book before it lands into
Yeah.
your hands as a reader.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so you were talking about, people requesting books, and so I was
Mhm.
wondering if we could kinda, go there right now. I know that you mentioned publishers will let you know what's coming out. If an author is not working with a big name publisher, maybe it's a smaller press, maybe they're an indie author, is it possible for them to request their book to be added to the library?
Yeah,
And if
100%, yeah. We actually got a lot of books sent to us, a lot of indie publishers sending their books to us, and we evaluate every single one. So I sit down with the book and I see if it's a good fit for our collection, and if it is, then I have no problem adding it in. The one thing that is a big barrier for us when it comes to buying indie publishers, they're not always available through our the main ways that we buy books. So for my library, one of the main ways that we order books is through Baker and Taylor. And I've gone to buy a book before and it's not on Baker and Taylor.
right.
So sometimes I'm like, oh, depending on what process your library has, if we can get on Amazon, sometimes we'll skip Baker and Taylor, but then we have to do a whole special request to buy something through Amazon.
And you're not getting it at your library discount, are you?
Exactly.
I'm assuming the libraries get some kind of benefit going through Baker and Taylor than if they were to just purchase it outright.
Exactly, and when you're working with a budget and you're working with a tight budget, sometimes for a lot of libraries, that is the case. It's hard because then you're like, "Oh, I don't know if I can spend $15 on this book when I normally only spend, like, $10 on a book," you know what I mean? So that's a really tough call, and sometimes you have to just say no because you cannot fit that into your budget.
Can you take a book if it's been donated?
Not really, not necessarily, because you would think. So, if somebody donates a brand new book and it's their book, maybe, but we try because library books go through so many different people's hands, and you want them to be as in good condition as possible. We can't buy used books.
Mhm.
So, which is so sad because sometimes, like, you'll need one. I hate when they do this. Sometimes they'll discontinue one book out of a series and I'm just like and I could buy a used copy technically to complete the series, but they will not let us do that because it's just not best practice.
Mm.
So, we do have a bookstore though. So, people donate things to the bookstore, and sometimes once in a while, if there's something that's in like impeccable condition and they know that like we might need it, sometimes they'll let us import the donation. Um, but so it's very circumstantial, and we really try not to do that. But some of the indie authors who give us their book to consider, sometimes we have either we've gone through Amazon, purchased them ourselves, or we have put their donated book in our collection. So it just depends. Because we are in a very populated area, we serve a really big community. We have a lot of local authors. And so that actually prompted us to create a local author section of our library.
Oh, that's so
And that way,
cool.
like, it's so cool. It's one of my favorite things that we've done in the recent year. Um, because we want to be able to highlight these authors because they're part of our community and we want to love and support them. But sometimes their stuff wasn't necessarily appropriate for our collection. So this way we had a place to put them and to let people check them out and let people see them and let people experience them. So yeah, if your local library doesn't have a local authors collection, totally suggest it to them and see if that's something they would be willing to do. Especially if you've already talked to them about getting your book in, but they don't think it's just they either don't have the space for it or it just doesn't work with their collection that they currently have, it's totally an option to bring up to them.
Let's talk a little bit about best practices for an author who
Mhm.
is going to approach the library and ask them to add their book. So obviously we've talked about a couple already. Having your book available through Baker and Taylor. Is Ingram Spark, is that somebody else that you purchased through, or is it just Baker and Taylor?
Not us, we mostly do Baker and Taylor. When it comes to the lower grade level books, there's one more that they use, but that's what they purchase some of their nonfiction books through them.
Okay.
I think it's one that specifically does, like, books for school libraries.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we do that one, and then we do Baker and Taylor, and then sometimes Amazon again if necessary,
Okay.
but, and we don't use Ingram.
Okay, it's interesting. And in this indie space, a lot of people use Ingram Spark as their print on demand because a lot of bookstores purchase through Ingram Spark. So that's why it's interesting to know, like just for those who are listening, your library might not be purchasing through Ingram Spark. I don't know very much about Baker and Taylor. I haven't done a lot of research. So that might be something that I'm going to make a note for myself to research it because I have not gone into that yet. Um, like, can indie authors even get to be a part of Baker and Taylor? So, that might be an episode in the future. But for right now, we're talking best practices. So, make your if you can have your book available through a distributor that the library is using to purchase. Um, Making sure that if they don't have a local author section, go ahead and suggest it to them. And don't be afraid to go ask your librarian about what their process is. Like you had mentioned earlier, every library is different. They have different needs, different space issues, and different budgets. And so ask your librarian what their process is at that particular library. What are some other best practices that you might suggest to authors when approaching a library about getting their book in the library? And specifically, is it best if the author makes the approach or if they have the audience make the approach?
That's a good question. So, I don't think I've ever had someone come to me and be like, "Can you please purchase this book?" Because like I said, most of our patrons at my library, they're looking for more popular mainstream material. They'll ask me for a book and I'll be like, "You know, it's not coming out till fall, right?" Like, I was already planning on buying it, but that's okay. So, I haven't necessarily had that situation happen. But I love when authors come in and talk to me about their book. And some of them, if they publish for preschool, they'll be like, "Yeah, like I would love to come in and do a story time," which we may or may not take them up on. Just making them know that, like, "Hey, I'm here. This is my community. And I just want to share what I do with the community." I think that's really important to make sure that they understand. We've had people who have given their books for us to consider and have not stopped calling when they don't see that their book has been added to the collection, and they call and they call and they call and they call, and then
Yeah.
which again is one of the reasons why we made the local author collection, because we're just like, now we have a place to put those books for those people who just are very adamant about seeing their book in the
So what
library.
I'm hearing from you is maybe give the librarians a chance. They are very busy. Might
Also,
need
just
a
trust
little,
them,
yeah, and
just
trust.
trust that, like, um, if your book isn't added to the collection, there is a reason for it, and
It's
they
not a
might
judgment. It's not a necessarily judgment on your writing
yeah.
or your book. It's just there's a bunch of
Yeah.
different factors involved.
Yeah, there's a ton of different factors involved, and one of the biggest things librarians are supposed to uphold is being nonpartisan. And
Mhm.
so, like, and that's why I say, like, we do evaluate every single book um, because I want to give every book a fair shake. So, just trust that that is their intention. That's what they're trying to do. And there's a million different reasons why that they might say yes or no to a book. But definitely I would just do your research. I would look at their website first. If this is not if you don't frequent which you should, if you're if you should frequent your public library, of course. But look at their website, just see if they already have the information posted on there. They might tell you exactly who to send the book to. They might tell you, here's the person in charge of our local authors collection, or this is who you can inquire with. So they might have that information readily available. So always look. And if they don't, go ahead and call the reference desk. They'll be more than happy to help you and put you in the right direction.
That is really great, advice. I love that. You just go ask. Like, that's what librarians are there for. Just
Right.
ask them, right? Um,
Exactly.
as you were talking, I was gonna ask you this question, and I don't know if you can actually answer it or not, because I know the area that you're located in, each library kinda operates independently of one another. They're not all part of the same system. For instance, in the area that I live, we have different branches, and they're all part of the same library system, whereas the libraries up by you are kinda independently run libraries, even though they have interlibrary loans and all that stuff, they still kinda are each their own thing. You're ordering a book just for your particular library, right?
Kind of. Yeah, so we're actually part of a consortium and we're adding our 50th library to it
Okay.
in the fall. So we actually have quite a large library system, but this is new for us. We only recently joined think it was last summer or last fall.
Okay.
Um which was a big change. It was a very big deal, but oh my goodness, has it offered so much more for our patrons. So, sometimes there have been collections that I have had to get rid of, and then, like, literally that week, like, someone is like, "Do you have this book?" And I'm just like, "Oh my god, I literally just got rid of it because it hasn't been checked out in 7 years." Um, but now because we're part of the consortium, um I'm able to see who in the other 50 libraries have it, and I can actually borrow it from them and get it sent to our libraries.
It's
Yeah,
giving
so
you a
we
little bit more flexibility with that.
a little bit more flexibility. It also really helps because, like I said, we have space issues. And so before where I had to like double up on popular copies, I don't have to buy so many duplicates anymore because now I know that if they can't get the Summer I Turned Pretty from our library because it has 1,000-mile hold list, I can have them get on the hold list from another library.
It probably works very similarly with the libraries that I'm at, um, near us, and I'm sure it's very unique across each state, and so I guess my advice to the listener is to just ask your library, like, Does if you order my book, is it just for this particular branch, or does it get sent to other branches? Like, somebody from another branch, can they request it? Or if you're more like in an area like Kaylee's where it's very individualistic libraries, not branches, how does that work? Just ask. Once again, ask.
Yeah.
Um, the reason I was asking that question is because I'm wondering if an author needs to go to multiple branches and ask them to get their book added to that library. I guess the answer to my question is you're just gonna have to ask your particular library and your particular library system how they do it there.
Also, every library is very heavily invested and focused on their community. And
Mhm.
for instance, my community looks different than the community right next door to ours.
Mhm.
So, an audience that I'm selecting for at my library, your book might not be suited for. Maybe my collection space doesn't allow for it. Maybe I have something in my collection already that's very similar to what you have, and I just like don't think that it's a hole I need to fill. So I pass on it, but the library in a town or 2 over, they might have a need for that type of book. They might be like, "Oh, finally, I finally found this book that fills this hole in the collection." Um, so, it doesn't hurt to ask other libraries either. There's only a few libraries in this area that have branches, so they're technically all part of the same community. But there's a lot of libraries in this area that are really close together who are completely different communities. They have different populations, they have different interests, they have different levels of some libraries have a more homeschool population, so they
Yeah.
try really hard to cater to their homeschool families. I'm really close to a high school, so our teen space is really important because our majority of our patrons during a certain hour of the day are teenagers. So, like I said, just because your book might not fit, for isn't a good fit for one library, doesn't mean it won't be a good fit for another library. So, if
Yeah.
you feel so inclined, feel free to always look and ask.
Yeah. So the takeaway from this is your library, like that you frequent as a patron, might not be the best fit for your book, which probably will feel really weird to you. But our whole goal as writers is to get our books into our hands of a reader for which that story will resonate, right? So let's
Mhm.
not take it personally. And let's just say, okay, maybe the town over, it might be a good fit for that town.
Yeah,
And so let's go ask that
yeah,
library and just do the legwork and put
yeah.
the miles into it.
Yeah. Or also, I do have to say, also try to get diverse feedback on your book. So I have evaluated some books, they've been submitted to me and they're like, this is a YA book. And then I read it and I'm like, this is not a YA book. You don't read YA. This is not YA. Like I can't even
Yeah.
put this in the YA section because it's not appropriate. So try to get diverse feedback because it could be that maybe you're still early in your writing journey and maybe you don't quite understand who your audience is yet. Or maybe you don't understand the proper format for a picture book. Maybe we've had picture books that are the children in the picture book are too old,
Mm,
preschool. You know what I mean? So their audience is not the right age for them. And then they're putting way too many words in a picture book. I'm like, this actually could be a good chapter book, like
yeah,
a beginner chapter book, because it's for like an 8-year-old who's going off to school. This isn't for a preschool audience.
right.
So don't ask your librarian; they don't want to tell you.
But that's what you're writing, like, being a part of a writing community,
Hmm.
and by that, I don't mean just, like, a writing community that's local that is just a get together of your peers. I'm talking about a writing community that is, associations or online writing communities where you have a wide variety of people of various levels of the publishing journey who can speak to those just the best practices of the industry, right? Like these are the things that are the norm. And I'm not saying that you have to always fit inside the norm, but just know that places like libraries are cataloging things. They're cataloging by category. And categories have to have specific criteria in order for things to be cataloged into that category, right? And so
Hmm.
you have to know exactly what your book is doing so that you can help the librarian do their job.
Exactly. So yeah, so just also recognize that your book might be good in a few years. You might need to just work on it a little bit more and get some diverse feedback on it, see what other people think. Get some insight from people who have published YA,
Yeah.
or have very success, whether that's individualized or not. Um,
Mhm.
Also go to your local conventions. In Chicago, we have C2E2 every year. My work sends me there. They
Mhm.
send me there to go see local authors and to
What does
go
that stand for?
it's, Chicago Entertainment Convention, something like that. Expo,
Okay.
something.
And so
So,
you're going there to see who's writing books?
yeah, technically it's more of a comic, but it's also, popular media.
Mhm.
So, superheroes and graphic novels, and I've met local authors there who I'm like, "Oh, I already have your book in the library." Like, I love it. Like,
Yeah.
and then I've also seen authors and I've gotten to pick up their work and I'm like, "Oh, this is really cool. This is along the lines of what we do, and so I take a picture of it to buy later. So, yeah, so make sure you're going to all your local conventions and any opportunities that you can maybe network with people, because you never know who you're gonna meet there. So make
Yeah.
sure that you're just getting out and showing people your work, because,
I
like I
love
said,
that.
you never know.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that as far as it being a connection to getting your book in the library, but that's a really great point
Yeah,
there that
yeah.
I didn't even know that librarians frequent things like that in order to see what they might wanna add to their collection. That's a really great point. So thank you for bringing that up. I have appreciated you sharing your insight into the background of how this all happens, the magic of the books just showing up on the bookshelf at the library. As we begin to wrap up our time, is there any other advice that you would want to give to authors about, especially indie authors, about getting their books into the library?
One of my biggest suggestions is just be a member of your library. Show up to programs, connect with people, learn. If not to get your book in the library, but just maybe they have recommendations or resources for you. Maybe if you do have a relationship with your librarians, whereas like I wouldn't necessarily give feedback of your YA book isn't written at the right level to just anyone. If this was someone who I had a relationship with, I might share that information, or maybe I would be able to provide resources, or maybe in just conversation, I'll be like, yeah, we're going to see to each of this year. Like, have you thought about getting a booth this year?
Mhm.
So just be involved in your community. That's another thing. If you're not involved in your community and your goal is to write for people within your community, you have to know who they are. You have to have a relationship with them. You have to see them at their everyday. And
Mhm.
so, if your goal is you're like, oh, I want to write a YA book for kids like me and the kids who grew up in my kids' school and the kids who grew up in the area, then you gotta know them. Like, just observing and getting to know them and getting to see things, just how they are out in the world and what they talk like and what they do and, what your community looks like, and that's what we're doing every single day as librarians is we're trying to be as in the community as possible, just so that we can service them as best as possible, and if your idea of writing is to service people, then you gotta know people.
And then as far as a librarian who sees a lot of books come across your desk, are there any, like, things that you're like, indie authors, make sure that you're like, it's really obvious you're an indie author or anything like that that makes them kind of stand out because you are seeing a large number of books come across your desk. So, is there anything that they should be paying attention to in particular?
Visuals are everything, and a lot of people do judge a book by their cover, and some indie art covers I've seen are awful. And it's a dead giveaway that it's an indie author. I'm like, "Oh, you did not have a bunch of people look at this book and say, 'Oh, I don't know about that.'" Or, "Oh, the font's really hard to read, actually." Or, "The font size isn't right. It's just not correct." Or sometimes I'll read and I'll be a chapter and I'm like, "Oh, they did not have somebody proofread." So, those are some dead giveaways, and I can't put something that's not grammatically sound in my collection. So, even if I think the book's a really cool concept and I'm like, "Oh gosh, I wish I could add this to my collection," but if it has bad grammar and it's hard to read, it cannot be on my shelf. It just isn't a good resource for people, whether that's for anything other than enjoyment.
So,
Um,
you might be forgiving of the cover not being the greatest as long as the
yeah.
content's really stellar
Yeah,
and
if
well
I
done,
think
and
exactly.
but also know that especially for those of you who are writing YA, um, those kids are judging those books by their cover.
100%, and that's why we see cover trends so often with YA. Right now for romance novels, the big trend is that you have, like, the cartoon people very similar to, like, the Emily Henry covers.
Yep.
YA has done the same exact thing where they take, like, kind of a cartoon rendition of it. Whereas, like, when I was younger, it was real people on the cover, kinda like a TV show.
Mhm.
So the trends come and go, so, be mindful of that, and, teens are judgy. When I've helped teenagers pick out books, they don't even read the back description sometimes, they just look at it and they're like, "No, I'm not gonna like that." I'm like, "Okay."
Which it probably, like, hurts your little library and heart a little bit, like,
Yeah.
"Come on, just give the
I
book
know
a
it's a
chance."
good I know it's from 20 years ago, but it's still good. Uh
Yeah.
The other day, someone came to me and they were like, "Hey, I can't remember the name of this book. I don't know the author's name. This is kind of what it was about," but they could tell me everything about the cover. They were like, "The
Mm.
cover had these 2 types of people on it, and they were, like, facing this way," and I was like, "Oh, I know that one, actually." Like, I remember the cover too. People remember your covers when they take note of it. So, sorry, your cover is actually really important.
Well,
Um, so yeah.
that's really helpful.
Yeah, so covers are important. But even more important is the content and is the quality of it. So if something feels low quality or self-published, like really low self-published quality of like they didn't even have someone proofread this before they tried to put it on Amazon. Um, because think of yourself as a consumer in the library. Like you don't want low quality books. You don't want
Mm.
books that you feel like haven't been proofread. You don't want to pick up something and be like, wow, they weren't very mindful when they bought this.
Yeah.
You don't want someone doing that with the books you take from the library. So we have very high standards for what we put on the shelf because we want our community to have the best.
Well, thank you so much, Kaylee. I think that'll be really helpful. I think one of my biggest takeaways from this is I did not think about the level of influence. Um, I knew it, but I didn't really quite put that into the back of my mind. The level of influence, like Book Talk or Bookstagram, how it can influence somebody just based on the cover, and that
Mhm.
that that can actually be defining. reason why somebody might go pick up the book is because they saw that cover. And so
Mhm,
the cover is really important. I know this, but that was a good reminder to
mhm,
me. And also just the fact that if we just go ask our librarians, they're more than willing to help us figure this out because more than likely they want to support their community and they want to support their local authors. We just have to kind of work with them. They're willing to help us, but we've got to provide them a product that they can put into their collection. So I
mhm.
appreciate you coming on and sharing all of that with us. Is there anything else? Any last words?
Support your local library.
Yeah,
Make
there we go. I love it.
make sure you have a library card.
Exactly. So,
Just get a library card. It helps us out so much for you to be a card holder and you just to love your library.
on that note, I'm going to say thank you for joining us. And to those of you who are listening, thank you for joining us again on this conversation of the business of Christian fiction. Join us next time as we continue to talk about what it means to make an impact and an income with your writing.